years to complete, assessing all the information sent back by the European spacecraft Giotto on its historic encounter with Halley's Comet.
In a minute, Patrick Moore will be showing us the latest pictures now they've been cleaned up by a computer. But first, have a look at a life-size model of the spacecraft which beamed back to Earth, the first close-up pictures of the head of the comet. Of course, it wasn't carrying astronauts, but it was crammed full with scientific instruments. And once this camera here was switched on for the first time, Patrick was at the European Space Operations Centre in Darmstadt to send Blue Peter viewers the very first picture.
There it is, and this picture was taken from Giotto this morning when the probe was still over 3 million kilometres away from the comet.
That's remarkable. Patrick, this is the first time this picture has been seen anywhere in the world, is that correct?
Yes, I think that is correct. And somewhere inside that white blob is the mysterious nucleus, about which we still know so little.
It was an exhilarating evening as Giotto approached close encounter, and by 10 minutes past midnight, computer pictures were being beamed back to Earth at the rate of 1 every 4 seconds. Giotto had dived into the heart of Halley's dust storm, and just seconds before closest approach, the signal went very weak, and millions of viewers thought Giotto had been destroyed.
Patrick, welcome back to Blue Peter.
Nice to be here.
What actually happened?
What actually happened was that Giotto was struck by a particle and literally jerked sideways. Now, the particles were very small, but when it's hitting you at something like 70 kilometres a second, it can make quite a difference. Now, the point is the pictures were taken by this camera, which is a very special kind of camera, and sent back to Earth via the antenna at the top. Now, that antenna has got to point exactly towards the Earth, but if it doesn't, you don't get any pictures. Well, it was knocked about a degree off, and therefore the pictures failed. Well, it took about half an hour for the robot mechanism to reacquire it, and then, of course, the great radio telescope at Parkes picked up the signals again. Never actually lost them. They became very weak. But the most important thing was that Giotto survived. Some of the equipment was damaged. The cameras jammed. Some of these solar panels, they were badly damaged too. But the important thing is that Giotto did, in fact, come through, and that was a great triumph. Now, when you look at this model, a life-size model, it's amazing to think that that has actually been right through Halley's Comet.
Patrick, tell us about the dust shield. How well did it perform in the close approach?
It performed magnificently. It was devised by Fred Whipple, one of the great comet men, and it was a double thing. Giotto actually went into the comet, dust shield first, and the outer shield absorbed the first impacts, and then we came to the second shield, which, as you said earlier, is made of Kevlar, which is the stuff that bulletproof vests are made of, and it worked very well indeed.
Well, Patrick, I've got a bulletproof vest here. I think this one's a bit small for me, but you can certainly see...
It's tough stuff, isn't it?
It's very tough. That's the Kevlar material, which is exactly the same.
Yes, it is indeed, and if you want a bulletproof vest, or if you want a dust shield, I'd go into Kevlar, have you?
Now, what happened to those computer pictures that were beamed back, Patrick?
Well, what happens is that they are cleaned up electronically, and this was done by the Max Planck Institute. And then, when that was done, you could really start to see something. And I've got a couple of them here. In point of fact, these colours are not genuine. They were added afterwards to make the pictures easier to interpret, so don't think of comets below that colour. But it does give the general idea. Dark part there, bright part here. You can see the bright part of the comet, and that blob in the centre of the picture is, in fact, the nucleus, which instead of being bright and icy, turned out to be dark. It was covered with dark dust, which most people hadn't expected, although Fred Hoyle and Chandra Wickramasinghe had. Now, here's an enlarged view when the probe was closer in. You can see the bright part there, and originally we thought that that was where the nucleus would be, which is why the camera is pointing straight at that, and the actual nucleus is over here to the top left. And that is as dark as velvet, which is a thing that most people did not anticipate at all.
Where's the famous tail?
Well, you can't see the tail on here, because this covers only a band of about 100 miles, and the tail is millions of miles long. But there are two kinds of tails, a dust tail and a gas tail, and they are very long indeed.
Well, Giotto has certainly put Europe back in the space race. What will happen to it next?
It depends very largely upon how badly it was damaged. It had a very rough ride through the comet, obviously, but it is coming back toward the Earth, and it'll be put back into an Earth orbit in 1990. And then, if it's in sufficiently good shape, it could be sent on to encounter another comet. I don't think there's much chance of going up and fishing it down. Great though that would be.
No. Said it before, but it looks so small, doesn't it, to cope with that. We didn't get a very good view of the comet from here, and apparently somebody travelled 4,000 miles to Peru, and when they got there, all they saw was what they described as a crummy fuzzball. Was it like that all over the world?
Well, I don't think your Peruvian gentleman was looking very hard, frankly. From here, it was never well seen. But from the southern hemisphere, in March and April, quite recently, it was very well seen, in fact. And there's a picture here, which was taken from Australia. You can see the head and you can see the tail. And I saw it there myself. But you can actually see the comet now in our evening sky, low in the south, after sunset. And if you know your star patterns, it's in the constellation of Traitor. But whether you'll see it now with the naked eye is a bit problematical, I think. I saw it last night very well with binoculars, but of course it does look, well, just like a fuzz now, with not much of a tail, but it's getting fainter all the time.
Is it going to be brighter again in 75 years' time?
No, I'm afraid it won't. It won't be a lot better. The return after that will be excellent. But remember this, although Halley's comet's not been spectacular this time, because when it came in, the Earth was on the other side of the Sun, and we weren't very close to it, in spite of that, this has been the most important of all returns. And I suppose you know that over the past few weeks, this probe has taught us more about comets than we've discovered all through scientific history.
Well, Patrick, thank you very much. It's been fascinating talking to you, as ever, and thank you for answering our questions.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, who knows what Giotto will discover in the 1990s. That's